In its simplicity, it was almost indistinguishable from the farmhouses around it, and Iori thought it puzzling that people talk more reverently about the Tokugawa family than they did about the most sacred of deities. Did that mean the Tokugawas were greater than the sun goddess? He wondered. I will have to ask Musashi about that when I get back. Taking out his map, he pored over it, looked about him, and stared at it again. Still, there was no sign of the Yagyu mansion. The evening mist spreading over the ground gave him an eerie feeling. He had felt something similar before, when in a room with the shoji shut, the setting sun's light played on the rice paper, so that the interior seemed to grow lighter as the outside darkened. Of course, such a twilight illusion is just that, but he felt it so strongly in several flashes that he rubbed his eyes as if to erase his lightheadedness. He knew he wasn't dreaming and looked around suspiciously. Why, you sneaky bastard, he cried, jumping forward and whipping out his sword. In the same motion, he cut through a clump of tall grass in front of him. With a yelp of pain, a fox leaped from its hiding place and streaked off, its tail glistening with blood from a cut on its hindquarters. Devilish beast, Iori set off in hot pursuit, and though the fox was fast, Iori was too. When the limping creature stumbled, Iori lunged, confident of victory. The fox, however, slipped nimbly away to surge ahead several yards, and no matter how fast Iori attacked, the animal managed to get away each time. On his mother's knee, Iori had heard countless tales proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that foxes had the power to bewitch and possess human beings. He was fond of most other animals, even wild boar and noisome possums, but foxes he hated. He was also afraid of them. To his way of thinking, coming across this wily creature lurking in the grass could mean only one thing. It was to blame for his not finding his way. He was convinced it was a treacherous and evil being that had been following him since the night before and had, just moments before, cast its malevolent spell over him. If he didn't slay it now, it was sure to hex him again. Iori was prepared to pursue his quarry to the end of the earth, but the fox, bounding over the edge of a drop, was lost to sight in a thicket. Dew glistened on the flowers of the dog nettle and spiderwort. Exhausted and parched, Iori sank down and licked the moisture from a mint leaf. Shoulders heaving, he finally caught his breath, whereupon sweat poured copiously from his forehead. His heart thumped violently. Where did it go? He asked, his voice halfway between a scream and a choke. If the fox had really gone, so much the better, but Iori didn't know what to believe. Since he had injured the animal, he felt it was certain to take revenge, one way or another. Resigning himself, he sat still and waited. Just as he was beginning to feel calmer, an eerie sound floated to his ears. Wide-eyed, he looked around. It's the fox for sure, he said, steeling himself against being bewitched. Rising quickly, he moistened his eyebrows with saliva, a trick thought to ward off the influence of foxes. A short distance away, a woman came floating through the evening mist, her face half hidden by a veil of silk gauze. She was riding a horse side saddle, the reins lying loosely across the low pommel. The saddle was made of lacquered wood with mother of pearl inlay. is changed into a woman, thought Iori. This vision in a veil, playing a flute and silhouetted against the thin rays of the evening sun, could by no stretch of the imagination be a creature of this world. As he squatted in the grass like a frog, Iori heard an otherworldly voice call Otsu, and was sure it had come from one of the fox's companions. The rider had nearly reached a turn-off where a road diverged to the south and the upper part of her body glowed reddish. The sun, sinking behind the hills of Shibuya, was fringed by clouds. If he killed her, he could expose her true fox form. Iori tightened his grip on the sword and braced himself, thinking, luckily it doesn't know I'm hiding here. Like all those acquainted with the truth about foxes, he knew the animal spirit would be situated a few feet behind its human form. He swallowed hard in anticipation, while waiting for the vision to proceed and make the turn to the south. But when the horse reached the turn-off, the woman stopped playing, put her flute in a cloth wrapper and tucked it into her obi. Lifting her veil, she peered about with searching eyes. Otsu, the voice called again. A pleasant smile came to her face as she called back. Here I am, Hyogo, up here. Iori watched as a samurai came up the road from the valley. Oh, he gasped when he noticed this that the man walked with a slight limp. This was the fox he had wounded, no doubt about it, disguised not as a beautiful temperess, but as a handsome samurai. The apparition terrified Iori. He shivered violently and wet himself. After the woman and the samurai had exchanged a few words, the samurai took hold of the horse bit and led it right past the place where Iori was hiding. Now's the time, he decided, but his body would not respond. The samurai noticed a slight motion and looked around, his gaze falling squarely on Iori's petrified face. The light from the samurai's eyes seemed more brilliant than the edge of the setting sun. Iori prostrated himself and buried his face in the grass. Never in his entire 14 years had he experienced such terror. Hyogo, seeing nothing alarming about the boy, walked on. The slope was steep, and he had to lean back to keep the horse in check. Looking over his shoulder at Otsu, he asked gently, why are you so late? You have been gone a long time just to have ridden to the shrine and back. My uncle got worried and sent me to look for you. Without answering, Otsu jumped down from the horse. Hyogo stopped. Why are you getting off? Something wrong? No, but it's not fitting for a woman to ride when a man's walking. Let's walk together. We can both hold the bit. She took her place on the other side of the horse. They descended into the darkening valley and passed a sign reading, sending an academy for priests of the Sodo Zen set. The sky was filling with stars, and the Shibuya River could be heard in the distance. The river divided the valley into North Higakubo and South Higakubo. Since the school established by the monk Rintatsu lay on the north slope, the priests were casually referred to as the Fellows of the North. The Fellows of the South were the men studying swordsmanship under Yagyu Munenori, whose establishment was directly across the valley. As Yagyu Sekishusai's favorite among his sons and grandsons, Yagyu Hyogo enjoyed a special status among the Fellows of the South. He had also distinguished himself in his own right. At the age of 20, he had been summoned by the famous General Kato Kiyomasa and given a position at Kumamoto Castle in Higo Province at a stipend of 15,000 bushels. This was unheard of for a man so young, but after the Battle of Sekigahara, Hyogo began to have second thoughts about his status because of the danger inherent in having to side with either the Tokugawas or the Osaka faction. 3 years earlier, using his grandfather's illness as a pretext, he had taken a leave of absence from Kumamoto and returned to Yamato. After that, saying he needed more training, he had traveled about the countryside for a time. He and Otsu had been together by chance the previous year when he had come to stay with his uncle. For more than 3 years prior to that, Otsu had led a precarious existence, never quite able to escape from Matahachi, who had dragged her along everywhere, glibly telling prospective employers that she was his wife. Had he been willing to work as an apprentice to a carpenter or a plasterer or a stonemason, he could have found employment on the day they arrived in Edo, but he preferred to imagine they could work together at softer jobs, she as a domestic servant, perhaps he as a clerk or accountant. Finding no takers for his services, they had managed to survive by doing odd jobs, and as the months passed, Otsu, hoping to lure her tormentor into complacency, had given in to him in every way short of surrendering her body. Then one day they had been walking along the street when they encountered a daimyo's procession. Along with everyone else, they moved to the side of the road and assumed a properly respectful attitude. The palanquins and lacquered strong boxes bore the Yagyu crest. Otsu had raised her eyes enough to see this, and memories of Seiki Shusai and the happy days at Koyagyu Castle flooded her heart. If only she were back in that peaceful land of Yamato now. With Matahachi at her side, she could only stare blankly after the passing retinue. Otsu, isn't that you? The conical sash hat came low over the samurai's face, but as he drew closer, Otsu had seen that it was Kimura Sugekuro, a man she remembered with affection and respect. She couldn't have been more amazed or thankful if he had been the Buddha himself, surrounded by the wondrous light of infinite compassion. Slipping away from Matahachi's side, she had hurried to Sugekuro, who promptly offered to take her home with him. When Matahachi had opened his mouth to protest, Sugekuro said peremptorily, "If you have anything to say, come to Higakubo and say it there." Powerless before the prestigious house of Yagyu, Matahachi held his tongue, biting his lower lip in angry frustration as he solemnly watched his precious treasure escape from him. An urgent letter. At 38, Yagyu Munenori was regarded as the best swordsman of them all. This hadn't kept his father from constantly worrying about his fifth son. If only he can control that little quirk of his, he often said to himself, or can anybody that self-will manage to keep a high position? It was now 14 years since Tokugawa Ieyasu had commanded Seiki Shusai to provide a tutor for Hidetada. Seiki Shusai had passed over his other sons, grandsons, and nephews. Munenori was neither particularly brilliant nor heroically masculine, but he was a man of good, solid judgment, a practical man not likely to get lost in the clouds. He possessed neither his father's towering stature nor Hyogo's genius, but he was reliable, and most important, he understood the cardinal principle of the Yagyu style, namely that the true value of the art of war lay in its application to government. Seiki Shusai had not misinterpreted Ieyasu's wishes. The conquering general had no use for a swordsman to teach his heir only technical skills. Some years before Sekigahara, Ieyasu himself had studied under a master swordsman named Okuyama, his objective being, as he himself frequently expressed it, to acquire the eye needed to oversee the country. Still, Hidetada was now shogun, and it would not do for the shogun's instructor to be a man who lost in actual combat. A samurai in Munenori's position was expected to excel over all challengers and to demonstrate that Yagyu swordsmanship was second to none. Munenori felt he was constantly being scrutinized and tested, and while others might regard him as lucky to have been singled out for this distinguished appointment, he himself often envied Hyogo and wished he could live the way his nephew did. Hyogo, as it happened, was now walking down the outside passageway leading to his uncle's room. The house, though large and sprawling, was neither stately in appearance nor lavish in its appointments. Instead of employing carpenters from Kyoto to create an elegant, graceful dwelling, Munenori had deliberately entrusted the work to local builders, men accustomed to the sturdy, Spartan warrior style of Kamakura. Though the trees were relatively sparse and the hills of no great height, Munenori had chosen the solid rustic style of architecture exemplified by the old main house at Koyaku. Angel called Hyogo softly and politely as he knelt on the veranda outside Munenori's room. Is that you, Hyogo? Asked Munenori without removing his eyes from the garden. May I come in? Having received permission to enter, Hyogo made his way into the room on his knees. He had taken quite a few liberties with his grandfather, who was inclined to spoil him, but he knew better than to do that with his uncle. Munenori, though no martinet, was a stickler for etiquette. Now, as always, he was seated in strict formal fashion. At times, Hyogo felt sorry for him. Otsu asked Munenori, as though reminded of her by Hyogo's arrival. She's back. She had only gone to Hikawa Shrine the way she often does. On the way back, she let her horse wander around for a while. You went looking for her? Yes, sir. Munenori remained silent for a few moments. The lamplight accented his tight-lipped profile. It worries me to have a young woman living here indefinitely. You never know what might happen. I have told Sekikuro to look for an opportunity to suggest she go elsewhere. His tone slightly plaintive, Hyogo said, I'm told she has no place to go. His uncle's change of attitude surprised him, for when Sugekuro had brought Otsu home and introduced her as a woman who had served Seiki Shusai well, Munenori had welcomed her cordially and said she was free to stay as long as she wished. Don't you feel sorry for her? He asked. But yes, but there's a limit to what you can do for people. I thought you yourself thought well of her. It has nothing to do with that. When a young woman comes to live in a house full of young men, tongues are apt to wag, and it's difficult for the men. One of them might do something rash. This time Hyogo was silent, but not because he took his uncle's remarks personally. He was 30 and like the other young samurai single. But he firmly believed his own feelings toward Otsu were too pure to raise doubts about his intentions. He had been careful to allay his uncle's misgivings by making no secret of his fondness for her, while at the same time not once letting on that his feeling went beyond friendship. Hyogo felt that the problem might lie with his uncle. Munenori's wife came from a highly respected and well-placed family, of the sort whose daughters were delivered to their husbands on their wedding day in cotton palanquins lest they be seen by outsiders. Her chambers, together with those of the other women, were well removed from the more public parts of the house, so virtually no one knew whether relations between the master and his wife were harmonious. It was not difficult to imagine that the lady of the house might take a dim view of beautiful and eligible young women in such proximity to her husband. Hyogo broke the silence, saying, "Leave the matter to Sugikuro and me. We will work out some solution that won't be too hard on Otsu." Munenori nodded, saying, "The sooner the better." Sugekuro entered the anteroom just then, and placing a letter box on the tatami, knelt and bowed. "Your lordship," he said respectfully. Turning his eyes toward the anteroom, Munenori asked, "What is it?" Sugekuro moved forward on his knees. "A courier from Koyagyu has just arrived by fast horse." "Fast horse," said Munenori quickly, but without surprise. Hyogo accepted the box from Sugekuro and handed it to his uncle. Munenori opened the letter, which was from Shoulder Kizemon. Written in haste, it said that the old lord has had another spell worse than any previous. We fear he may not last long. He stoutly insists his illness is not sufficient reason for you to leave your duties. However, after discussing the matter among ourselves, we retainers decided to write and inform you of the situation. His condition is critical, said Munenori. Hyogo admired his uncle's ability to remain calm. He surmised that Munenori knew exactly what was to be done and had already made the necessary decisions. After some minutes of silence, Munenori said, "Hyogo, will you go to Koyagyu in my stead?" "Of course, sir." "I want you to assure my father there's nothing to worry about in Edo, and I want you to look after him personally." "Yes, sir." "I suppose it's all in the hands of the gods and the Buddha now. All you can do is hurry and try to get there before it's too late. I'll leave tonight." From Lord Munenori's room, Hyogo went immediately to his own. During the short time it took him to lay out the new things he would need, the bad news spread to every corner of the house. Otsu quietly went to Hyogo's room, dressed to his surprise for traveling. Her eyes were moist. "Please take me with you," she pleaded. "I can never hope to repay Lord Sekishusai for taking me into his house, but I would like to be with him and see if I can be of some assistance. I hope you won't refuse." Hyogo considered it possible that his uncle might have refused her, but he himself did not have the heart to. Perhaps it was a blessing that this opportunity to take perhaps it was a blessing that this opportunity to take her away from the house in Edo had presented itself. "All right," he agreed, "but it will have to be a fast journey. I promise I won't slow you down." Drying her tears, she helped him finish packing and then went to pay her respects to Lord Munenori. "Oh, are you going to accompany Hyogo?" he said, mildly surprised. "That's very kind of you. I'm sure my father will be pleased to see you." He made a point of giving her ample travel money and a new kimono as a going-away present, despite his conviction that it was for the best. Her departure saddened him. She bowed herself out of his presence. "Take good care of yourself," he said with feeling as she reached the empty room. The vassals and servants lined up along the path to the gate to see them off, and with a simple farewell from Hyogo, they were on their way. Otsu had folded her kimono up under her obi, so the hem reached only 5 or 6 inches below her knee. On her head was a broad-brimmed lacquer traveling hat, and in her right hand she carried a stick. Had her shoulders been draped with blossoms, she would have been the image of the wisteria girl so often seen in woodblock prints. Since Hyogo had decided to hire conveyances at the stations along the high road, their goal tonight was the in-town of Sanganya, south of Shibuya. From there, his plan was to proceed along the Oyama High Road to the Tama River, take the ferry across and follow the Tokaido to Kyoto. In the night mist, it was not long before Otsu's lacquered hat glistened with moisture. After walking through a grassy river valley, they came to a rather wide road, which, since the Kamakura period, had been one of the most important in the Kanto district. At night it was lonely and deserted, with trees growing thickly on both sides. "Gloomy, isn't it?" said Hyogo with a smile, again slowing down his naturally long strides to let Otsu catch up with him. "This is Dogen Slope. There used to be bandits around here," he added. "Bandits?" There was just enough alarm in her voice to make him laugh. "That was a long time ago, though. A man by the name of Dogen Taro, who was related to the rebel Wada Yoshimori, is supposed to have been the head of a band of thieves who lived in the caves around here." "Let's not talk about things like that." Hyogo's laughter echoed through the dark, and hearing it made him feel guilty for acting frivolous. He couldn't help himself, however. Though sad, he looked forward with pleasure to being with Otsu these next few days. "Oh," cried Otsu, taking a couple of steps backward. "What's the matter?" Instinctively, Hyogo's arm went around her shoulders. "There's somebody over there." "Where?" "It's a child sitting there by the side of the road, talking to himself and crying." The poor thing. When Hyogo got close enough, he recognized the boy he had seen earlier that evening, hiding in the grass in Azabu. Iori leaped to his feet with a gasp. An instant later, he uttered an oath and pointed his sword at Hyogo. "Fox!" he cried. "That's what you are, a fox." Ogo Otsu caught her breath and stifled a scream. The look on Iori's face was wild, almost demonic, as if he were possessed by an evil spirit. Even Hyogo drew back cautiously. "Foxes!" Iori shouted again. "I'll take care of you." His voice cracked hoarsely, like an old woman's. Hyogo stared at him in puzzlement, but was careful to steer clear of his blade. "How's this?" shouted Iori, whacking off the top of a tall shrub not far from Hyogo's side. Then he sank to the ground, exhausted by his effort. Breathing hard, he asked, "What do you think of that, Fox?" Turning to Otsu, Hyogo said with a grin, "Poor little fellow. He seems to be possessed by a fox." Maybe you are right, his eyes are ferocious, just like a fox's. Isn't there something we can do to help him? Well, they say there's no cure for either madness or stupidity, but I suspect there's a remedy for his ailment. He walked up to Iori and glared sternly at him. Glancing up, the boy hastily gripped his sword again. Still here, are you? He cried, but before he could get to his feet, his ears were assailed by a fierce roar coming from the pit of Hugo's stomach. Yaw! Iori was scared witless. Hugo picked him up by the waist and holding him horizontally, strode back down the hill to the bridge. He turned the boy upside down, grasped him by the ankles, and held him out over the railing. Help, mother, help, help, sensei, save me. The screams gradually changed. Otsu hastened to the rescue. Stop that, Hugo. Let him go. You shouldn't be so cruel. I guess that's enough, said Hugo, setting the boy down gently on the bridge. Iori was in a terrible state, bawling and choking, convinced there was not a soul on earth who could help him. Otsu went to his side and put her arm affectionately around his drooping shoulders. Where do you live, child? She asked softly. Between sobs, Iori stammered, "Oh, over that way," and pointed. "What do you mean that way?" Ba, Bakurocho. Why, that's miles away. How did you get all the way over here? I came on an errand. I got lost. When was that? I left Bakurocho yesterday. And you have been wandering around all night and all day? Iori half shook his head but didn't say anything. Why, that's terrible. Tell me, where were you supposed to go? A little calmer now, he replied promptly, as though he had been waiting for the question, to the residence of Lord Yagyu Munenori of Tajima. After feeling around under his obi, he clutched the crumpled letter and waved it proudly in front of his face. Bringing it close to his eyes, he said, "It's for Kimura Sugekuro. I am to deliver it and wait for an answer." Otsu saw that Iori took his mission very seriously and was ready to guard the missive with his life. Iori, for his part, was determined to show the letter to no one before he reached his destination. Neither had any inkling of the irony of the situation, a missed chance, a happening rarer than the coming together across the river of heaven of the hurt boy and the spinning maiden. Turning to Hyogo, Otsu said, "He seems to have a letter for Sugekuro. He has wandered off in the wrong direction, hasn't he? Fortunately, it's not very far." Calling Iori to him, he gave him directions. "Go along this river to the first crossroads, then go left and up the hill. When you get to a place where three roads come together, you will see a pair of large pine trees off to your right. The house is to the left across the road. And watch out you don't get possessed by a fox again," added Otsu. Iori had regained his confidence. "Thanks," he called back, already running along the river. When he reached the crossroads, he half turned and shouted, "To the left here?" "That's it," answered Hyogo. "The road's dark, so be careful." He and Otsu stood watching from the bridge for a minute or two. "What a strange child," he said. "Yes, but he seems rather bright." In her mind, she was comparing him with Jotaro, who had been only a little bigger than Iori when she had last seen him. Jotaro, she reflected, must be 17 now. She wondered what he was like and felt an inevitable pang of yearning for Musashi. So many years since she had had any word of him. Though now accustomed to living with the suffering that love entails, she dared hope that leaving Edo might bring her closer to him, that she might even meet him somewhere along the road. Let's get on, Hyogo said brusquely, to himself as much as to Otsu. There's nothing to be done about tonight, but we will have to be careful not to waste any more time. Filial Piety. Filial Piety. What are you doing, Granny? Practicing your handwriting? Juro, the reed mat's expression was ambiguous. It might have been admiration or simply shock. Oh, it's you, said Osugi with a trace of annoyance. Sitting down beside her, Juro mumbled, copying a Buddhist sutra, are you? This elicited no reply. Aren't you old enough so you don't have to practice your writing anymore? Or are you thinking of becoming a calligraphy teacher in the next world? Be quiet. To copy the Holy Scriptures, one has to achieve a state of selflessness. Solitude is best for that. Why don't you go away? After I hurried home just to tell you what happened to me today, it can wait. When will you be finished? I have to put the spirit of the Buddhist enlightenment into each character I write. It takes me 3 days to make one copy. You have got a lot of patience. 3 days is nothing. This summer, I'm going to make dozens of copies. I have made a vow to make 1,000 before I die. I will leave them to people who don't have proper love for their parents. 1,000 copies, that's a lot. It's my sacred vow. Well, I'm not very proud of it, but I guess I have been disrespectful to my parents like the rest of these louts around here. They forgot about them a long time ago. The only one who cares for his mother and father is the boss. It's a sad world we live in. Haha. If it upsets you that much, you must have a good for nothing son too. I'm sorry to say, mine has caused me a lot of grief. That's why I took the vow. This is the Sutra on the Great Love of Parents. Everyone who doesn't treat his mother or father right should be forced to read it. You are really giving a copy of whatever you call it to 1,000 people? They say that by planting one seed of enlightenment, you can convert 100 people, and if one sprout of enlightenment grows in 100 hearts, 10 million souls can be saved. Laying down her brush, she took a finished copy and handed it to Juro. Here, you can have this. See that you read it when you have time. She looked so pious. Juro nearly burst out laughing, but he managed to contain himself. Overcoming his urge to stuff it into his kimono like so much tissue paper, he lifted it respectfully to his forehead and placed it on his lap. Say, Granny, you sure you wouldn't like to know what happened today? Maybe your faith in the Buddha gets reset. I ran into somebody pretty special. Who might that be? Miyamoto Musashi. I saw him down at the Sumida River, getting off the ferry. You saw Musashi? Why didn't you say so? She pushed the writing table away with a grunt. Are you sure? Where is he now? There now, take it easy. Your old Jiro doesn't do things halfway. After I found out who he was, I followed him without him knowing it. He went to an inn in Bakurocho. He's staying near here. Well, it's not all that close. It may not seem that way to you, but it does to me. I have been all over the country looking for him. Springing to her feet, she went to her clothes cabinet and took out the short sword that had been in her family for generations. Take me there, she ordered. Now? Of course now. I thought you had a lot of patience, but why do we have to go now? I I'm always ready to meet Musashi, even on a moment's notice. If I get killed, you can send my body back to my family in Mimasaka. Couldn't you wait until the boss comes home? If we go off like this, all I will get for finding Musashi is a bawling out. But there's no telling when Musashi might go somewhere else. Don't worry about that. I sent a man to keep an eye on the place. Can you guarantee Musashi won't get away? What? I do you a favor and you want to tie me up with obligations? Oh, alright, I guarantee it, absolutely. Look, Granny, now's the time when you should be taking it easy, sitting down copying sutras or something like that. Where is Yajibe? He's on a trip to Chichibu with his religious group. I don't know exactly when he will be back. I can't afford to wait. If that's the way it is, why don't we get Sasaki Kojiro to come over? You can talk to him about it. The next morning, after contacting his spy, Jiro informed Osugi that Musashi had moved from the inn to the house of a sword polisher. See, I told you, declared Osugi. You can't expect him to sit still in one place forever. The next thing you know, he will be gone again. She was seated at her writing table, but hadn't written a word all morning. Musashi hasn't got wings, Jiro assured her. Just be calm. Koroku's going to see Kojiro today. Today? Didn't you send somebody last night? Tell me where he lives. I will go myself. She started getting ready to go out, but Jiro suddenly disappeared and she had to ask a couple of the other henchmen for directions. Having seldom left the house during her more than 2 years in Edo, she was quite unfamiliar with the city. Kojiro's living with Iwama Kakube, she was told. Kakube's a vassal of the Hosokawas, but his own house is on the Takanawa High Road. It's about halfway up Isagarago Hill. Anybody can tell you where that is. If you have any difficulty, ask for Tsukinomimisaki. Tsukinomimisaki. That's another name for Isagarago Hill. The house is easy to recognize because the gate is painted bright red. It's the only place around there with a red gate. Alright, I understand, said Osugi impatiently, resenting the implication that she was senile or stupid. It doesn't sound difficult, so I'll just be on my way. Take care of things while I'm out. Be careful about fire. We don't want the place to burn down while Yajibe's away. Having put on her zori, she checked to make sure her short sword was at her side, took a firm grip on her stuff, and marched off. A few minutes later, Juro reappeared and asked where she was. She asked us how to get to Kakube's house and went out by herself. Oh well, what can you do with a pig-headed old woman? Then he shouted in the direction of the men's quarters. Koroku, the acolyte, abandoned his gambling and answered the summons post-haste. You were going to see Kojiro last night, then? You put it off. Now look what's happened. The old woman's gone by herself. So when the boss gets back, she will blab to him. You are right, and with that tongue of hers, she will make us look real bad. Yeah, if she could only walk as well as she talks, but she's thin as a grasshopper. If she gets ran into by a horse, that will be the end of her. I hate to ask you, but you better go after her and see she gets there in one piece. Koroku ran off and Jiro, ruminating on the absurdity of it all, appropriated a corner of the young man's room. It was a big room, perhaps 30 by 40 feet. The floor was covered with thin, finely woven matting, and a wide variety of swords and other weapons were lying about. Hanging from nails were hand towels, kimono, underwear, fire hats, and other items of the sort a band of never-do-wells might acquire. there were two incongruous articles. One was a woman's kimono in bright colors with a red silk lining. The other was the gold lacquered mirror stand over which it was suspended. They had been placed there on the instructions of Kojiro, who explained to Yajibe somewhat mysteriously that if a group of men lived together in one room with no feminine touch, they were apt to get out of hand and fight each other, rather than save their energies for meaningful battles. You are cheating, you son of a bitch. Who's cheating? You are nuts. Jiro cast a disdainful look at the gamblers and lay down with his legs crossed comfortably. With all the rumpus going on, sleep was out of the question. But he wasn't going to demean himself by joining one of the card or dice games. No competition as he saw it. As he closed his eyes, he heard a dejected voice say, "It's no good today, no luck at all." The loser, with the sad eyes of the utterly defeated, dropped a pillow on the floor and stretched out beside Juro. They were joined by another, then another, and another. "What's this?" asked one of them, reaching out for the sheet of paper that had fallen from Juro's kimono. "Well, Abi, it's a sutra. Now, what would a mean cuss like you be carrying a sutra for?" Juro opened one sleepy eye and said lazily, "Oh, that? It's something the old woman copied. She said she had sworn to make 1,000 of them." "Let me see it," said another man, making a grab for it. "What do you know? It's written out nice and clear. Why, anybody could read it. Does that mean you think you can read it? Of course, it's child's play." "All right then, let's hear some of it. Put a nice tune to it, chant it like a priest." "Are you joking? It's not a popular sound." "What difference does that make? A long time ago they used to sing sutras. That's how Buddhist hymns got started. You know a hymn when you hear one, don't you?" "You can't chant these words to the tune of a hymn." "Well, use any tune you like. You sing, Juro." Encouraged by the enthusiasm of the others, Juro, still lying on his back, opened the sutra above his face and began the sutra on the great love of parents. "Thus have I heard, once when the Buddha was on the sacred vulture peak in the city of royal palaces, preaching to bodhisattvas and disciples, there gathered a multitude of monks and nuns and lay believers, both male and female, all the people of all the heavens, dragon gods and demons, to hear the sacred law. Around the jewel throne they gathered, and gazed with unwavering eyes at the holy face." "What's all that mean? When it says nuns, does it mean the girls we call nuns? You know, I heard some of the nuns from Yoshiwara have started powdering their faces gray and will give it to you. We'll give it to you for less than in the whorehouses." Quiet. At this time, the Buddha preached the law as follows: "All you good men and good women, acknowledge your debt for your father's compassion. Acknowledge your debt for your mother's mercy. For the life of a human being in this world has karma as its basic cause, but parents as its immediate means of origin." It's just talking about being good to your mama and daddy. You've already heard it a million times. Shh, sing some more, we will be quiet. "Without a father, the child is not born. Without a mother, the child is not nourished. The spirit comes from the father's seed. The body grows within the mother's womb." Juro paused to rearrange himself and pick his nose, then resumed. "Because of these relations, the concern of a mother for her child is without comparison in this world. Noticing how silent the others were, Juro asked, "Are you listening?" "Yes, go on." "From the time when she receives the child in her womb, during the passage of 9 months, going, coming, sitting, sleeping, she is visited by suffering. She ceases to have her customary love for food or drink or clothing, and worries solely about a safe delivery." "I'm tired," complained Juro. "That's enough, isn't it?" "No, keep singing. We are listening." "The months are full and the days sufficient. At the time of birth, the winds of karma hasten it on. Her bones are racked with pain. The father, too, trembles and is afraid. Relatives and servants worry and are distressed. When the child is born and dropped upon the grass, the boundless joy of the father and mother match that of a penurious woman who has found the omnipotent magic jewel. When the child utters its first sounds, the mother feels that she herself is born anew. Her chest becomes the child's place of rest, her knees its playground, her breast its source of food, her love its very life. Without its mother, the child cannot dress or undress. Though the mother hungers, she takes the food from her own mouth and gives it to her child. Without the mother, the child cannot be nourished. "What's the matter? Why did you stop?" "Wait a minute, will you? Will you look at that? He's crying like a baby." "Oh, shut up." It had all begun as an idle way to pass the time, almost a joke, but the meaning of the words of the sutra was sinking in. 3 or 4 others besides the reader had unsmiling faces, their eyes a far-away look. The mother goes to the neighboring village to walk. She draws water, builds the fire, pounds the grain, makes the flour. At night, when she returns before she reaches the house, she hears the babies crying and is filled with love. Her chest heaves, her heart cries out. The milk flows forth, she cannot bear it. She runs to the house. The baby, seeing its mother approach from afar, walks its brain, shakes its head, and wails for her. She bends her body, takes the child's 2 hands, places her lips upon its lips. There is no greater love than this. When the child is 2, he leaves the mother's breast, but without his father, he would not know that fire can burn. Without his mother, he would not know that a knife can cut off fingers. When he is 3, he is weaned and learns to eat. Without his father, he would not know that poison can kill. Without his mother, he would not know that medicine cures. When the parents go to other houses and are presented with marvelous delicacies, they do not eat but put the food in their pockets and take it home for the child to make him rejoice. "You blabbering again?" "I can't help it. I just remembered something." "Cut it out. You will have me doing it too." Sentimentality with regard to parents was strictly taboo among these denizens of society's outer edge, for to express filial affection was to invite charges of weakness, effeminacy, or worse. But it would have done Osugi's aging heart good to see them now. The sutra reading, possibly because of the simplicity of the language, had reached the core of their being. "Is that all? Is there any more?" "There is lots more." "Well, wait a minute, will you?" Juro stood up, blew his nose loudly, and sat down to intone the rest. "The child grows, the father brings cloth to clothe him, the mother combs his locks, the parents give every beautiful thing they possess to him, keeping for themselves only that which is old and worn. The child takes a bride and brings the stranger into the house. The parents become more distant. The new husband and wife are intimate with each other. They stay in their own room, talking happily with each other." "That's the way it works, all right," broke in a voice. The parents grow old, their spirits weaken, their strength diminishes. They have only the child to depend on, only his wife to do things for them. But the child no longer comes to them, neither at night nor in the daytime. Their room is cold, there is no more pleasant talk. They are like lonely guests at an inn. A crisis arises, and they call their child. 9 times in 10 he comes not, nor does he serve them. He grows angry and reviles them, saying it would be better to die than to linger on unwanted in this world. The parents listen, and their hearts are filled with rage. Weeping, they say, "When you were young, without us you would not have been born. You would not have been born. Without us you could not have grown. Ah, how we." Churro broke off abruptly and threw the text aside. I can't. Somebody else read it. But there was no one to take his place. Lying on their backs, sprawled out on their bellies, sitting with their legs crossed and their heads drooping between their knees, they were as tearful as lost children. Into the middle of this unlikely scene walked Sasaki Kojiro. Spring shower in red. "Isn't Yajibe here?" Kojiro asked loudly. The gamblers were so absorbed in their play and the weepers in their memories of childhood that no one replied. Going over to Juro, who was lying on his back with his arms over his eyes, Kojiro said, "May I ask what's going on?" "Oh, I didn't know it was you, sir." There was a hasty wiping of eyes and blowing of noses as Juro and the others pulled themselves to their feet and bowed sheepishly to their sword instructor. "Are you crying?" he asked. Yes, I mean no. You are an odd one." While the others drifted off, Juro began telling about his chance encounter with Musashi, happy to have a subject that might distract Kojiro's attention from the state of the young man's room. "Since the boss is away," he said, "we didn't know what to do, so Osugi decided to go and talk to you." Kojiro's eyes flared brightly. Musashi's putting up at an inn in Bakurocho. He was, but now he's staying at Tsushino Kosuge's house. That's an interesting coincidence, is it? It just happens I sent my drying pole to Tsushino to walk on. As a matter of fact, it should be ready now. I came this way today to pick it up. You have been there already? Not yet. I thought I would drop in here for a few minutes first. That's lucky. If you had shown up suddenly, Musashi might have attacked you. I'm not afraid of him, but how can I confer with the old lady when she's not here? I don't imagine she has reached Isarago yet. I will send a good runner to bring her back. At the council of war held that evening, Kojiro expressed the opinion that there was no reason to wait for Yajibe's return. He himself would serve as Osugi's second so that she might, at long last, take her proper revenge. Juro and Koroku asked to go along too, more for the honor than to help. Though aware of Musashi's reputation as a fighter, they never imagined he might be a match for their brilliant instructor. Nothing could be done tonight, however. For all her enthusiasm, Osugi was dead tired and complained of a backache. They decided they would carry out their plan the following night. The next afternoon, Osugi bathed under cold water, blackened her teeth, and dyed her hair. At twilight, she made her preparations for battle, first donning a white underrobe she had bought to be buried in and had carried around with her for years. She had had it stamped for good luck at every shrine and temple she visited. Sumiyoshi Shrine in Osaka, Oyama Hachiman Shrine and Kiyomizu-dera in Kyoto, the Kannon Temple in Asakusa, and dozens of less prominent religious establishments in various parts of the country. The sacred imprints made the robe resemble a tie-dye kimono. Osugi felt safer than she would have in a suit of mail. She carefully tucked a letter to Matahachi into the sash under her obi, together with a copy of the Sutra on the Great Love of Parents. There was also a second letter, which she always carried in a small mani pouch. This said, "Though I am old, it has become my lot to wander about the country in an effort to realize one great hope. There is no way of knowing but that I